The sun hung pale and indifferent over the auction yard, casting long, tired shadows across dust that hadn't known rain in weeks. Men bartered in blunt voices, trading cattle and women as if they weighed the same on a ledger. Among them stood a woman, still a stone but far from lifeless. Her shoes didn't match, one heel worn to the nail, the other flapping at the sole. Her hair was a mess of undone braids, loose strands catching what little breeze there was. But her gaze, oh, her gaze, it held steady. Not proud, not begging. Just there, like a lantern left burning in a forgotten window. The auctioneer's voice cracked as he spoke of her being practical. A bride for work, not for wanting. Men chuckled. A boastful rancher, wide-brimmed hat tilted like a smirk, stepped forward, tossing a lazy dollar on the platform. His eyes scanned her, looking for cracks. When she met his gaze, unblinking, he laughed and turned away. He wasn't looking for a storm he couldn't tame. By the fence post stood a man who hadn't planned on being part of this trade. A cowboy with hands tucked in his pockets, hat pulled low, face unreadable. He watched, not with interest, but with a kind of distant knowing. When the auctioneer's chant faltered, slashing her price to a mere $3, his hand lifted. Not high, not proud, but enough. A flicker of something stirred in his chest. Pity, maybe, or maybe it was the discomfort of seeing a life weighed in coins. No one cheered the sale. No one clapped. She stepped down from the platform, feet moving with a grace that defied the dust. He didn't offer his hand. She didn't expect it. The deal was made, plain and cold. But as they walked to his horse, there was a silence between them that felt heavier than any words could carry. The ride to his ranch stretched long and hollow. Hooves drummed a slow rhythm against the earth. He kept his eyes on the trail ahead, his posture respectful but distant. She stole glances, noticing the frayed edges of his gloves, the careful way he held the reins, the way his jaw clenched whenever their eyes accidentally met. He didn't speak of expectations. She didn't ask about intentions. She knew this wasn't kindness. Survival often wore quieter clothes. Yet, in the hush of that journey, something unspoken settled. He wasn't a man who sneered. He wasn't a man who laughed at her steadiness. He was a man who bought a stranger for $3 and now rode beside her as if afraid to disturb the air between them. She sat tall in the saddle, but her fingers gripped the horn a little too tightly. He noticed, didn't comment, but his pace slowed just a notch, making the ride less jarring for her. She noticed that too. Neither of them knew it then, but in that quiet, awkward ride, the first thread of something fragile had been tied. Not with ceremony, not with promises, but with the smallest act of shared breath. He didn't know why he kept glancing her way when he thought she wasn't looking. She didn't know why the silence, usually her armor, felt less heavy near him. But both knew, though they'd never admit it yet, that something had shifted. And shifts like that, in a land where souls are often cheap, are worth more than the men who laugh ever understand. The house sat low against the land, as if it had learned long ago not to stand too proud. Weather-beaten wood, a porch that creaked even when no one walked it, and inside, a table with just one chair. 2 cups sat on the table anyway, though only one had been used for years. Out of habit, perhaps, or hope, or maybe some routine stick, because the hands don't know what else to do. She woke before the rooster dared. Quiet as breath, she moved through the house, sweeping dust that had already settled back in, mending curtains that would tear again, and scrubbing a stove that hadn't been properly cleaned in years. He found her like that, sleeves rolled, hair tied back, hands working. He hadn't asked her to, wouldn't have. He stood in the doorway, awkward in his own home, watching her as if she were a puzzle no one had taught him to solve. "You don't have to do that," he said, voice rough with mourning. She didn't stop, just glanced up at the look that said she knew, but she'd do it anyway. Some women stitched wounds. She stitched homes. Later that day, when the chores slowed and the sun pressed less fiercely, he found himself fumbling for words. "You know, if you want to leave, you can." His eyes didn't meet hers. He added, "I wasn't expecting you to stay if it ain't what you wanted." She folded the cloth in her hands with a kind of reverence, then looked at him soft and steady. Where would I go? It wasn't bitter, wasn't tragic, just plain fact, like saying the sky was wide. He didn't press her after that. The days moved slow, each one etching new, small rhythms into the house. She tended the place like it had never been abandoned. He watched from a distance that wasn't quite as far as before. Still, he kept his words brief, not out of cruelty, but because he'd never learned to use them for anything soft. It was a widowed neighbor who finally cracked the silence open. She arrived one afternoon, pie in hand, eyes sharp but kind. Brought something sweet, though I reckon you already got your hands full with sweeter company, she teased, glancing from him to the woman standing quietly in the doorway. The widow talked as though the house had always been filled with laughter. She sat the heroine down, asked about where she came from, not as gossip, but as if it mattered. For the first time in a long while, someone spoke to her, not at her. She didn't say much, but the corners of her mouth learned how to curve again. The cowboy noticed. He noticed the way she listened with her whole self, the way she didn't fill silences, but honored them. That evening, when the sun bled gold across the sky, he found the latch to her bedroom door hanging loose. No words passed between them as he fixed it, but the next morning his work shirt, the one torn at the shoulder, sat mended on the table. No grand gestures, just threads, wood, fabric moments being stitched back into place. They sat on the porch one night when the sky decided to gift the earth with a rare rain. It wasn't much, but the drops tapped a rhythm soft enough to drown out the things they didn't yet know how to say. "You're quiet," he said, not accusing, just observing. "Noise never did much for me," she replied, watching the rain rather than him. He smiled then, the kind of smile that doesn't break faces wide but settles in the eyes, where truth tends to live. That night, as he sat alone at the table, he noticed something. The chair across from him wasn't empty anymore. She had never sat there, not yet, but her presence filled it all the same. 2 cups, 1 chair. But for the first time in years, the house felt like it was waiting for something, not mourning it. He thought about the $3, how small a price it was, how shamefully small. Not just the money, but what it meant, how little he had offered her. He had assumed she'd be grateful, compliant, easy to fold into his routine. But she wasn't something to fold. She was a quiet current, reshaping the edges of his world without making a sound. And she, in her own way, began to breathe easier. Not because he gave her reasons to, but because he didn't take away the space for it. He didn't ask for her past. He didn't demand her future. He simply let her be. In a world where folks took what they could, the simplest kindness was in what wasn't taken. And that was how 2 people, bound by a silent transaction, began to build a life where neither felt owned, but rather found. The field stretched wide, fence posts leaning like old men who'd seen too many storms. He hammered a new slat into place, the wood shuddering under each strike, while beside him, she held the post steady. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Their rhythm found itself. His hammer rising, her hands bracing, 2 bodies leaning into the same wind. Not lovers, not yet friends, just 2 people stitching something back together, not knowing if it was a fence or themselves. She wasn't delicate about the work. Mud smeared her dress. Splinters clung to her palms. But she moved with the ease of someone who'd carried weight before. He started to glance her way when measuring a cut, waiting for a nod, a small gesture of agreement. He didn't even realize he was doing it. One morning, as dawn still clung sleepy against the horizon, a boy wandered onto the ranch, barefoot, shirt torn, eyes sharp with hunger that had learned to hide itself. She found him first, crouched near the barn, pretending not to steal. She didn't scold him, just said, softly, "You must be starving. Come inside." The boy ate at their table, hands fast but polite. The cowboy watched, leaning in the doorway, arms crossed. He didn't ask questions, just said, "You can stay a few days, long as you're willing to help mend the fence." The boy nodded, the kind of nod that held more gratitude than 1,000 thank yous. For those days, the house felt fuller. The boy's scrappy chatter filled the silences, though he too learned when to quiet down. She treated him as if he'd always belonged there. The cowboy didn't say much about it, but each evening, when he poured water into 3 cups instead of 2, his hands moved a little slower, like savoring a rhythm that felt right. One evening, after the boy had gone to bed and the sky bled out its last colors, she brought him a cup of water. Their fingers brushed, a brief, almost accidental touch. He didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. The silence between them wasn't hollow anymore. It was full, as if something unseen had begun to settle into place. But peace in a town like theirs never sat still for long. The shallow rancher rode up one afternoon, his grin as sharp as his spurs. He leaned on his saddle horn, surveying the land with a sneer. "Still playing house with your $3 prize?" He taunted, spitting dust at the ground. He didn't look at her when he spoke of her past, as if she were a commodity on a ledger, not a woman standing inches from him. The cowboy didn't rise to the bait. He didn't raise his voice or his fists. He just stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, a quiet wall that didn't budge. His silence wasn't weakness. It was a statement louder than any brawl. The rancher left, his insults scattering like dry leaves in the wind, useless and forgotten. That night, the house held a stillness that wasn't uneasy. She lit a single candle, its glow painting soft gold across the rough walls. They sat at the table, not across from each other, but near enough that the space between them felt deliberate. "I thought I'd be someone's mule," she said, not as a confession, but as a simple truth. That was the path laid out. Carry loads, take orders, we're down till there's nothing left. He looked at her, steady. "I bought a bride, not a mule." She laughed then, not loud, but full. The sound surprised them both. He smiled, softer than before. The candle flickered like it was nodding in agreement. From that night onward, the house breathed differently. They still spoke little, but when they did, words landed softer. He started to notice her hum as she worked. She noticed he lingered in the kitchen longer, offering to peel potatoes, even though he was terrible at it. They weren't playing roles anymore. Not buyer and bought, not helper and master. They were something else. 2 souls, learning how to lean on each other without fear falling. And in a world that often mistook noise for strength, they were building something quieter, something that felt a whole lot like belonging. The dawn broke soft over the ranch, brushing gold across the land, but the air carried something sharper. Footsteps approached, not hurried, but heavy, as if the earth itself resented carrying them. She stood on the porch, her hand resting on the railing, watching the dust rise from the trail. He joined her without a word. They both knew this day would come. The shallow man returned, not alone this time. He came with papers rolled tight in his fist, and 2 men flanking him, smug with borrowed authority. His horse snorted, impatient, as he dismounted with grin too wide to hold truth. "Brought some legal matters today," he said, waving the deed like a flag. "Seems your little bride wasn't rightly yours to keep. She's property misplaced in a botched sale. I'm just here to claim what's owed." The cowboy didn't move, didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at her, the woman beside him, and spoke as if the rest of the world had gone silent. "No one takes what's mine, but you decide who you are." She stepped down from the porch. Her boots hit the earth with a weight that wasn't there months ago. She faced the shallow man, his words rolling over her like wind over stone. "You're not here for a claim," she said, her voice steady. "You're here because you can't stand seeing something you threw away stand taller than you." The men behind him shifted. Doubt, small and creeping, started to wrinkle their faces. From the corner of the ranch road, figures appeared. The widowed neighbor, apron still dusted with flour, stood with arms crossed. Beside her, a handful of townsfolk, quiet but present, not armed with guns but with eyes that said, "We see what's right." The shallow man's smirk faltered. He looked at the crowd, then back at her. His papers meant nothing in the open air, against witnesses who had no need for ink to recognize truth. He muttered curses under his breath, turned back to his horse, and left in a cloud of dust that didn't rise high enough to hide his defeat. There was no cheer, no applause, just the wind moving through the grass, as if nature itself had cast a verdict. That evening, as the sky folded itself into a deep indigo, they sat on the porch again. the same place where their silences had once been strangers. This time, he reached for her hand first. His fingers, rough from years of work, wrapped gently around hers, as if understanding that some treasures aren't found in the ground but in moments like this. She leaned her head against his shoulder. No words passed between them. None were needed. The world hadn't changed. Men would still trade souls for coin. But their world, the small one built from patched shirts, mended fences, and unspoken kindness, had become whole. Some folks spend their lives chasing fortunes, chasing noise and gold that slips through fingers no matter how tightly held. But some, the lucky few, find a lifetime in a choice so small, so quiet, it almost goes unnoticed. He didn't buy her heart that day at the auction, but in the quiet days after, he built a home where her heart could stay. And sometimes that's the richest story of all. He was no longer the man who bought a bride. She was no longer the woman sold. They were just two souls who chose every morning to stand side by side in a world quick to claim and quicker to discard. Their choice was their victory. And in that choice, /$3 had turned into everything.